Jim had a bad weekend.
Jim Jefferies is also on the list for sure of worst weekend in the world. Jim Jefferies, this video comes out. He's interviewing this guy.
Avi is.
I'd never heard of the guy
hadn't
before.
either. I guess he's an Australian. I guess he's a very conservative. I don't know, is he anti-immigration or Muslim immigration, or is he just?
I know people say he's
hardcore right winger.
I think he's definitely a hardcore right winger. People say he's an asshole, but I don't know anything about him. But he might be an asshole. But regardless of if he's an asshole or not, by the way, if he is an asshole, it makes Jim Jefferies look even worse, because if somebody's an asshole, you shouldn't have to be duplicitous to make them look like an asshole.
The thing that's really bad in this is that, like, he said that beforehand, he asked them not to put him with a Nazi and not to take one answer and put it with another one,
right?
Another question. And that's something that shows do, interviews do. I think Opie and Anthony said O'Reilly did that to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's something that's been happening for a long time.
That's why, depending on celebrities, if you're a big enough celebrity that you can call your own shots, a lot of people won't do taped interviews. Because they know that I know what you're going to do here, especially for shows like this.
I was reading something about that. Like, if you don't want stuff like that to happen, if you do those interviews, only do it if there's like a digital clock or something behind you,
so people know
the time code or something. Like, yeah, one of those things where they can't fuck with. Like, they can put questions in a different order, or they're going to edit an interview. You're not going to have a 1 hour interview, so he knows that going in. But to have your answer for one question put with another is terrible.
Or you do it like this guy did it. You put your own camera. WWE, they had a thing where they did. I think it was CNN. John Cena did some interview. They were doing some show about wrestling or whatever, and it was like, oh, the dangers of blah blah blah. You know, and they had they were talking to John Cena, I believe, about steroids, and they completely changed his answer around so it looked way worse. And WWE was smart enough to have their own camera running the whole time.
Right.
So they released the whole interview. They said, here's the interview from start to finish. Here's what actually happened. And CNN had completely fumbled up with the tapes to make it look like something else.
Yeah, and the reason this is so bad is because this hits a bigger issue. This goes into like the whole idea of what fake news, even though it's a comedy show, it's not technically news, but still, with something like the New Zealand shooting, to take what a guy said, and Jim is not the editor for the show, so you got to say that too. I don't know how much hand he has in the editing, or if he just does the interview.
But you do know,
and they put it together.
If you're sitting there watching, you know what's on your show,
right?
You know what happened in the interview.
Sees the last cut,
right? So like he's got to watch this and know
it's one show a week. It's not like
this isn't what happened, but this is the narrative. I don't think he made the edits, but I think he was aware
of the tone it was set. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's very bad because it taps into the whole fake news thing of taking a guy's view. Like when you saw the guy's answer to Muslim, hey, look, who says there's borders? In theory, you're right. Like, he actually gave a pretty reasonable answer. So the guy to put a crazy answer after what he said, you understand why like that's the whole idea of what fake news is like you're making this guy look like he's so anti-Muslim that he's not going to give you. He just made it look like he was going to give you a really nasty shit answer, but he gave a really reasonable answer, and people don't want to see their views misrepresented, so they look like radical lunatics when they're not.
The guy's name is Avi Yemini, and he was interviewed by Jim Jefferies about because his views on immigration and Islam and all this stuff, and he did this about a month before the New Zealand shooting,
or even more than that. I thought he said a couple of months ago. I think that was even before that.
I think he said a month, but regardless, it was enough time before that it had nothing to do. So, like Jim just said, Avi made this video where he told everybody, I told Jim Jefferies and his producers, don't put me next to like neo-Nazis and don't use my answers and change them and put different questions in. And they said, okay. But they did both of those things. And so Avi actually had his phone positioned without the producers knowing and shot the entire interview that he and Jim Jefferies did together. He said it was like an hour long. He released a couple of minutes of it. I think he said he's going to release the whole thing on Patreon, which is smart. But already in the couple of minutes, it makes Jim look really bad because you're right. It's not a news show, but the whole reason Comedy Central does these shows is because people do go to them to get informed.
Sure, the Daily Show.
Yeah,
people do watch
the Daily
Colbert Show when it was on. Like, you know, you're getting a slant on it, but you still feel like you're getting news from it.
The Daily Show's claim to fame was that young people were going to the Daily. Originally, it was just a total goof news show. It was almost like The Onion, you know, where nothing was taken seriously. It was a goof. Then young people actually started watching the Daily Show as a news show, and that's where what's his face, Jon Stewart, rose to the fame that he rose to on that show because he actually did a news show that was comical in nature.
But this is where like the networks like Comedy Central and everything go wrong. You don't have to like what this guy Avi says, and you can make fun of his views and you can make fun of him, but don't paint him like you don't have to edit his answers to do, like, you can do it honestly. You can say like, yeah, this is what he said, and I don't like, you can have it be an honest exchange where you're at least letting him say what he wants to say and not editing what he says.
Yeah, that's the issue, that if the guy's an asshole and that's why you're having him on the show, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Right.
But you have to give him the opportunity to make himself look like an asshole.
Yeah.
You can't go...
You can't do it for him by
especially behind the scenes.
Editing. Yeah.
Yeah. So he aired this thing where, again, like Norton just said, they go and he asks a question about borders. And what aired on Comedy Central was this sort of super extremist, you know, closed borders, blah, blah, blah answer. But the actual answer to the question, which he aired on his YouTube video, was a completely kind of rational, let's have a discussion about this answer.
Yeah.
You know, where he said, look, you know, I get what you're saying, but you can't live in a world where there's just no borders anywhere.
Because Jim said, Jim said, who's to say where a person can live? And he goes, borders? I mean, and he kind of, again, the answer was like, hey, in theory, you're right, but that's not human nature. I'm paraphrasing, but it was a pretty reasonable answer.
He was saying, I'm against the idea of just there being open borders in every country ever because human nature dictates that that doesn't work, and it hasn't worked. And I don't think that that's even an extremist point of view. I would think the extremist point of view is the idea that there should never be any borders. That's an extremist point of view.
Like Sam will say white is right and white only. I don't always agree with you.
How did we go there?
I'm just saying.
That's not what I said.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
No, you misunderstood completely.
I apologize.
And you're taking me a little out of context, too. That's not how I feel. But it does, I mean, it looks really bad because the integrity in Jim Jefferies' show and the reason why people watch, like, it's funny. It's funny because it's true.
You know, and
it's supposed to be anyway.
And it's also, this guy had nothing to do with the Christchurch murders. This guy was nowhere near that. This was taped before that.
You tried to tie him in.
Yeah, well, there's no need to tie this guy into that.
And then I think in an effort to kind of make Avi comfortable to say things that might have been anti-Muslim, Jim Jefferies was like, what did he have? He had drawn a photo of Muhammad.
They don't show the drawing, but he's saying he drew it. And he was just saying, like, I don't like wearing a burqa. Like, any of the stuff Jim is saying to goof off or be funny. Like, now they're going back and grabbing his old bits, which I don't like. It's like, look, if you're saying stuff to be funny, it's one thing. Who gives a fuck? It's just stand up. Because he makes fun of every religion. I don't think that there's anything to that. But even the people that would want to defend him, like even people on the left can't defend him.
Because of that.
Because of that. So it's like he's in a bad spot because people who would defend him, like, hey, you know, he didn't mean it, or again, you know, whatever they would say to defend him, they can't defend him. And, you know, the right is just, this is fake news and this is what they do to us all the time.
Right. And you know that that's what's going to happen. I don't understand this idea that sometimes when you're trying to prove a certain point of view is wrong, and you'll do it at all costs, when people find out that you're lying about it, all you're doing is making this other point of view so much stronger.
Yeah, you don't, like when you see Bill Maher does interviews, right? I just keep thinking, I'm sure the quote was around disinfectant's the best sunlight. I don't know who made that up, but it's a great quote, whoever did.
Wait, what's the quote?
Disinfectant is the best sunlight. Oh, sunlight's the best disinfectant. Yeah, you're right. There you go.
Yes, sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Just let somebody say what they want. Like you don't have to edit what they're saying. If you think their point of view is so stupid or so fucked up, let them say it, and other people will have the same reaction if their view is fucked up.
I think that's 100% right. And Bill Maher is
disinfectant is the best sunlight. What a cunt
I am. But Bill Maher is a great example. Him having Milo on, everybody said he was a scumbag for having Milo on. And I believe that Milo doing Bill Maher's show, Milo Yiannopoulos, was the worst thing that Milo ever did. Because it's exactly what you just said, Norton. He put sunlight on this point of view that shouldn't have had. You can't put that much mainstream onto some of these sort of, I don't want to say extremist points of view. Because what happens is people who aren't in your base become aware of you, and then the enemy starts to build, and the mob starts to build. And if you just allow people, if they're that bad, if you just allow people to show themselves, you have to have faith. And this is what the left, I think it's more the left than the right, but this is what the left's problem is, that they feel like audiences have to be spoon-fed. Well, this is bad, and here's why, as opposed to just having faith that if you show somebody at their truth, the general public will be able to determine for themselves what's right and wrong. That's
where I've noticed most of speech policing coming from. I'm not saying the right doesn't do it. I've just noticed most of it coming from the left, and it's unfortunate. It really bothers me.
Yeah.
You don't need to do it. You don't need to tell somebody what they can't fucking say or edit them so they sound worse than they are. Like, if that guy is a very extreme guy, but he's fairly reasonable, all right, well, make him look fucking fairly reasonable. Or let the point of view be what it is, and let people come to their own conclusion.
Give him a live mic. Do it live. Like, give him a live microphone and actually have the conversation with him. So if he's a monster, people who watch that show will be able to say that guy's a monster. Yeah. You don't have to mix around his questions and answers and whatnot to try to prove this thing that should be easy to prove. If a person's a monster, it should not be that difficult to prove.
Yeah, and and Jim's a friend. I like Jim so it's like you don't want to see this happen to a guy you like.
Right, me too.
So there's no satisfaction in seeing it with a guy I like a lot. But it ties into a much bigger issue for people, and that's why this has caught so much, because there's so much talk in the last couple of years about the press and about the media, and this was said to me privately. But let's just say somebody who has taken a beating in the public eye in the last few years.
Is it Rich Voss?
No, the public eye.
I see.
Who hates Trump? This person hates Trump.
Okay, and
said the one thing Trump is right about is the press. The one thing. Like, they agree with nothing he has said, but the one thing that he's right about is the media. They are fucking, it's disgusting the way they behave. They all edit stuff. Again, Zimmerman, I think, was a shit. But you didn't have to edit his audio to make him look worse, like NBC did.
It's a great example. Zimmerman is the prototypical person that if you just put the spotlight on him, he's going to prove to the world what a fuckface he is. And all he's done since Trayvon has proved what a total fuckface of a person he is.
But you did not have to edit that fucking audio for me to get the point.
Exactly.
To make it look like he was saying something worse. That's such sneaky shit.
It's already there. Like, it's there for you. Just show it. And if you're the news, or if you're a show that's supposed to inform people.
Yeah. You're not supposed to have a conclusion in mind. And you're not supposed to make the news by walking around showing the video of the old lady getting kicked on. What do you think? How the fuck is that news? This asshole's not part of the story. Some guy walking out of a 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
That's not the story.
Yeah.
What do you think? I wish one person would go, that's great. She must have really just one person I would love to see respond that way.
Look at the footprint on her forehead.
Yeah. I love that guy.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just it does, you're right. It does suck to see it happen to somebody that you know. But you sit there and you're going like Jim, like, why would you do this? Like, I would love to have him back on the show, because that was my question. Like, what are you doing, man? Why? You don't have to do this. Why are you going this route with it?
Yeah, you don't need to do it, especially to tie it into something like a massacre. This guy's views. This guy's not. I don't think he's calling for any. And again, I know only what I've seen in this video. I haven't gone out and watched a lot of this shit. But he just seems like he's a guy who's a conservative when it comes to the fucking borders. And everyone who's a conservative when it comes to the borders is not a hateful person who despises everyone coming in.
You don't have to make hateful people look hateful.
Even
they do it on their own.
But is he even hateful?
But that's what I mean. If a person is hateful, and like I said, I don't know anything about him, but if he is a hateful dude to the point that it's harmful, you don't need to make him look that way. He'll do it himself. And you just sit there and you let it happen. I don't even like, though, when comedy shows edit interviews around to get to punchlines. Like, if it's a real interview, it's one thing if it's a fake interview and it's just for the goof, then of course, you write it, do whatever editing you want. But if you're interviewing somebody on a comedy show, I don't even like when they mix it up then, because you're like, oh, the joke was in the fact that this is true. If it's not true, then that's not as funny.
This guy, he's saying that he's going to sue Jim Jefferies. That probably won't work, just because I'm guessing when you sign a release, you're signing away your rights to whatever. I mean, who the fuck knows what's in the fine print, but they probably cover every angle in those contracts.
And I would also imagine that because it's labeled a comedy show, you have certain abilities to, to air things certain ways. There is not a journalistic responsibility to tell the truth legally.
Yeah. I would love to know what Comedy Central, they'll have to respond to it.
Well, yeah, they'll have to. I mean, we were talking about it over the weekend, but, you talk about people catching on to this thing. It's got like almost 1.5 million views on YouTube.
And when you're doing interviews, if you're being interviewed, it is a good idea to tape the interview so they cannot. Yeah. And there's been times where things are done. I think this was absolutely 100% done on purpose to make him look bad. There's times when you do an interview, they just chop it and they don't even realize they're doing something that makes you look bad. But I've watched what they've done with certain things. Like, oh man, what the fuck are they? They're clickbaiting, or it's not necessary to do that, but they do it.
I wonder if they'll say anything if it doesn't catch on. I mean, I know that the video's got a lot of views,
meaning it's caught on in that circle.
It's on Breitbart. It's on very few websites. Like, it's not a mainstream story.
Which, by the way, goes to the point of the people criticizing it. The fact that it's not a mainstream story, because if this were happening to the other side, if, for instance, Fox News, not Fox News, if a conservative entertainment show.
You can't think of one. Isn't that amazing? There isn't one. There isn't one.
Yeah, it's true.
Every entertainment show has to have the same angle behind it. It's crazy.
If there were a conservative entertainment show.
If the business would allow that to happen.
Yeah, if there were a conservative entertainment, if Crowder were doing it, if Louder with Crowder, wherever he is, I don't even know if he's on YouTube anymore.
Yeah, he is.
Is he still on YouTube? Good.
Yeah, I think they took down his feed. That one I made an appearance when he was doing the Oscars, but I think they took him down, and we had to do it somewhere else because he was his live feed.
Oh, so he doesn't? Yeah, because I don't think
it's permanently.
When you get a strike against you, they take down your ability to stream live for a period of time.
He puts a lot of effort into his show.
Yeah, he does.
I like Crowder.
That's how he makes his living.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Crowder were sitting there editing interviews to make liberal people look worse than they actually are, I think it would be a big story.
Absolutely. If he had done that to somebody, you're right.
Yeah, especially if he was sneaking in points of view about Islam, that would be very bad for him.
I'm trying to think of an example like that would be more mainstream than Crowder, because it would be on TV, but not as big as like a Fox News. There's got to be somebody on the.
I mean, what is Tommy Lauren doing now?
Who's that?
The blonde? She's like a big conservative.
I don't even know who she is. Or if I do, I can't remember.
She was on Glenn Beck's network for a while, and now I think she's on Fox News' digital network.
I think she's a Fox News contributor.
Yeah, and she does a show on their digital platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but it wouldn't go well. But it is. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
Because no one can defend him.
Yeah, what justification could you have?
Because you can't justify that. The fact that he doesn't do the editing is probably correct, but the bottom line is he does know the tone. Mm-hmm. And knowing that you're doing this with an interview you've taped a month before, and you're talking about the New Zealand massacre, like somehow a guy like this had something to do with it. It's not fair at all.